What the hell are we going to do without men? You look around the city here, you see all these buildings go up. These men, they're doing impossible things. They're under the streets, working on the sewers. They're up on the power lines in the storms and the rain. They're keeping this impossible infrastructure functioning, this thing that works in a miraculous manner. They work themselves to death, and often literally. And the gratitude for that is sorely lacking, especially among the people who should be most grateful. You see university professors, especially of the social justice bent, who are among the most protected and privileged people that the world has ever produced. They take everything they have for granted, failing to understand entirely that there's a massive infrastructure of unbelievably hardworking, solidly laboring, working class men breaking themselves in half on a regular basis, making sure that everything that always breaks works. And so a little gratitude for that is in order. And it's very useful to tell everyone, not just men, that they have an important role to play, a necessary role, and that if they act properly and honestly and forthrightly, that they can put their lives together and they can help their families and they can make their communities better, and that that's not toxic masculinity, that appalling phrase. It's what keeps the world going round. If we had any sense, we'd understand that instead of doing everything at every possible moment to label what we have in the West as oppressive and patriarchal and fundamentally predicated on power, of all the insane propositions. Anybody who's ever worked for a functional organization knows perfectly well that the organization isn't predicated on power. You have a boss whose fundamental motivation is power. Well, first of all, the probability that he's going to be successful is very low because everyone will be working against him behind the scenes. The people who are successful are good mentors, and they're hard workers, and they're productive, and they're competent, and they do their job properly, and they do everything they can. My observation has been that they do everything they can to find junior colleagues who have potential and possibility and work diligently to further their careers, and find that a major, if not the major, source of satisfaction in their life. Certainly the people I've met in my life who've been very successful, and I've met many very successful people, are thrilled to death when they can find someone who's young and willing and able and conscientious and straightforward and diligent, and they open doors for them in every direction they can possibly manage. And none of that's credited to the oppressive, capitalist, patriarchal system, which also is doing miracles, is performing miraculously all around the world, raising the standard of living of poor people everywhere in the world at a rate that's unprecedented in human history. You know, for me to feel empathy for you, I have to see the world through your eyes. And I do that with my body. What I do, technically, is I attempt to determine what your goal is. And I do that by observing, well, your nonverbal behavior substantially, your verbal behavior as well, especially the direction of your eyes. And I get some sense of what you're focused on as a consequence of that. And because of that, I can also focus on that. And if I do the same thing, then my body reacts the same way yours does, in which case I feel emotions that are similar to yours, and then I can understand you. And so when you go to a movie or you read a piece of literature, you focus on the protagonist or whatever, or the series of protagonists, and you identify their goals. And by identifying their goals, you can place yourself in the same state of mind that they are, and then you can embody their emotions. It's not a cognitive process, it's an embodied process. And then you can read off your emotions and infer what they might be thinking. And then that gives you the opportunity to see the world from the perspective of other people, which you need to do if you're going to cooperate and compete with them successfully. And so literature, storytelling, not literature specifically, but storytelling and all of the dramatic arts are there precisely to facilitate that understanding. That's why children pretend play so often and so naturally. They adopt roles to become other people so that they can understand each other. It's crucially important. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is the fact that our modern technologies, especially phones, because they're so ubiquitous, are likely interfering with children's ability to engage in sufficient dramatic play. And because of that, it's destabilizing their identities. I often wonder if these adolescents who are having gender role confusion, and say, let's call it identity confusion in general, are doing something like delayed pretend play because they didn't get it when they were young. And it's not optional. It's crucial. There's about a 4-year period from about the age of, let's say, 3 till 7 or 8, where you need to engage in continual dramatic play. And that's what catalyzes your identity, enables you to practice who you're going to be. And if that's interfered with, well, we have no idea what the consequences of that will be. I would say social isolation to begin with, because a kid that can't play, is hopeless socially. You're hopeless socially unless you can play. And you need that early. I've traveled to 160 cities in the last year and spoken to about 350,000 people about personal responsibility and the meaning that is to be found in not in rights, but in responsibility. And no one seems to be talking about that for reasons I don't understand. And so people are starving to hear that, also for reasons I don't understand. So that's the situation now. And it's a very odd life. Although my name is not, I would say, particularly positive among certain elements of the press. I'm accused of all sorts of things that have absolutely nothing to do with what I believe. But my normal life, such as it is continually punctuated by encounters with people on the street. Dozens a day, if I go outside, of people who tell me that they've watched my videos, they listen to my podcasts, they read my book, they were in desperate straits 6 months ago, they're doing much better. And so they're thankful about that and help and pleased that someone is offering them an encouraging word. So I actually happen to be rather positively predisposed to people. And I think that's rare because in our culture we believe that we're something like a cancer on the planet and that our activity is unconscionably destructive and that the best thing we could do is to cease having children and make ourselves scarce. And I think that that's a viewpoint that's cruel and vicious and resentful and appalling. And I buy none of it. We do the best we can under very difficult circumstances, and we're only barely waking up to our planetary responsibilities and not doing such a bad job for people who've only figured it out 50 years ago. So I'm trying to offer people some encouragement for their trouble. And they seem in staggeringly desperate need of that. It's very peculiar and difficult to accustom myself to meeting endless parades of strangers everywhere in the world who tell me a desperate story with a happy ending. It's a very private story, and they obviously trust me enough to, first of all, tell me what was wrong, and then let me in on the fact that things have improved dramatically because they've developed a vision for their life, and because they've decided to marry their girlfriend, and because they've decided to have a family, finally, and to settle down, and to work at their career, even though they may just have a job, and to tell the truth, and that's working,